Good morning. Um, Today is day 3, and I just feel like I just need to tell the story of what happened. I feel like every time I speak with someone and I tell them the story about what happened to my mom, I don't know, it makes me feel like I'm releasing some of the stress. It's a long story. It might be in multiple parts, so bear with me. So before she got COVID, right when New York decided to have everybody show their V card, I call it a V card. Right when when New York said everyone needed to show their V card before going to restaurants and indoor events, my mother called me. I was at work, and I'm getting married on September the 3rd. It's a vow renewal. We never got married, but had a real ceremony. So it's a vow renewal, but we're having a ceremony. And she was planning a spa day for me before the ceremony. And her and my cousin have already decided that they weren't going to get vaccinated. And so she called me and she said, we're not going to go to this spa day, me and your cousin, and I'm just going to give you the money, and you can go ahead and go, but we're not going to go because we're not getting vaccinated. At that time, I had received my first shot already, and I was really upset about that. It wasn't like her to just bail on me, even for something like this, it was just odd for her to bail on me. Even before then, we were talking about why she didn't want to get the vaccine. And like I mentioned in a previous video, all of the different conspiracy theories that she was thinking about and reasons why she was didn't want to. She never told me that she was afraid to get it. She just told me that she wasn't going to get it, and for whatever reasons. And then my stepdad, during this time, my stepdad was sick, and he had diarrhea, and he was really sick. They thought it was food poisoning, and they thought it was food poisoning from Miller's Ale House, but it wasn't. So in speaking with my mom about my stepdad and whatever was going on with him, like I said, he had diarrhea, he wouldn't eat, and she told me that he lost weight, a lot of weight, within a short amount of time. It'd been like a week. And I've heard of other people with cases of COVID who had similar symptoms to him, and he also had a cough. And considering that they thought it was food poisoning, I thought it was odd that he would be coughing unless he was in the bathroom throwing up. And it was itching in the back of my mind at the time. I talked to her during my work shift. I didn't mention it then. But when I got off work that particular day, I said, "Mom, are you sure that's not COVID-19? And my initial thought why I mentioned it was because at work, we had to do screenings, and in one of the screening questions, it runs off a whole bunch of symptoms, and diarrhea is one of them. And my mom, she used to work as a home health aide, and so she said to me, that's not COVID-19, it's food poisoning. I know if it would be COVID-19 because I used to work in the healthcare field, so I would know." So I told her, okay. And maybe a day or two later, I had a doctor's appointment, a regular doctor's appointment. And she sent me a text message saying, "You're going to have to help us." And I said, "Why? What's wrong?" She said, "My stepdad tested positive for COVID." And I said, "Are you serious? Are you serious?" And she said, "Yes." And my mom, she also has kidney disease, and so she gets dialysis. So this was very alarming to me, because we needed to know immediately if she tested positive, because it would affect her as far as going to dialysis and things like that. And so that day, she tried to scramble to find somewhere to get tested. She ended up getting tested, and when she got tested, her and my brother came back COVID positive. And I know in her heart she was terrified, because she knew about her regular medical conditions and that it was going to be a very tough situation for her if she ever contracted COVID. And she contracted COVID. So right when she tested positive, she started getting set up with having to go to dialysis in a COVID positive unit. She had to go to another state within our tri-state area to do that. And they gave her transportation and everything to do that. When she tested positive in the hospital, because she couldn't get a rapid test anywhere else, so she went back to the hospital where my stepdad was, and they did test her and my younger brother. And like I said, they tested positive. But they sent her and my younger brother home because they had mild symptoms. They told her to stay hydrated and to rest. I found that odd that happened, because she has kidney disease, and that's one of the questions that you get asked or whatever when dealing with COVID. COVID really attacks those type of people, those immunocompromised people. So it was odd to me that the hospital sent her home without observing her or anything. And she came home, and the first couple of days she was fine. And then there was one day she had some issues. I checked on her all day long. And it got to a point where the night when she first went into the hospital, she was throwing up. She told me she threw up 4 times, and she told me she went to the bathroom on herself. But she wasn't sure if she should call 911. Now, that wasn't her being unsure, had nothing to do more than likely with her symptoms and how she was feeling. Sometimes we don't want to call 911 because we're afraid of that bill, that hospital bill that comes when they send potentially the ambulance and the fire truck and all of that to try to get you. And I had a real conversation with her, and I said, look, Mom, forget about that bill, forget about any of those things that may be on your mind right now as to why you don't want to call 911. COVID is not something that you play with. This is not something that you just lay down with and you're going to get better. You don't know what you get when you get COVID. So if you feel like you need to call 911, call them. Don't worry about anything else. It doesn't matter. And eventually she made the decision to call 911, and she was hospitalized that night. She was hospitalized that night. So the hospital they took her to was the same hospital that she went to get tested, that sent her home without observations or whatever. And she was there. She was fine. She was coherent. We were able to speak to each other. She seemed fine, but at the same time, I guess her condition may have been deteriorating, and she wasn't able to convey that really to us, or maybe she willingly did not. But eventually that hospital let her go. She was only there for a couple of days. They let her go like late this one day. And when she came home, my stepfather called me and let me know that she was home. But she wouldn't get out the car. She was complaining about extreme back pain. And then eventually she came into the house on her own, but she was on the floor, lying on the floor, complaining about extreme back pain. And my stepdad was released from the hospital. He was fine. He's still fine now. Prior to her going to the hospital, he was released. And so he was home. And I said, I hope she knows that you're not going to be able to pick her up because you're still experiencing some symptoms too with the shortness of breath and everything. And eventually in the middle of the night, that night, my younger brother sent me a text message letting me know that she was going back to the hospital because of her extreme back pain. And then my stepdad, about 20 minutes or so later, told me the same thing via text. So the next day, my stepdad called the original hospital she was at, and she wasn't there. And we were shocked because the particular hospital was down the street from their home. And they told him to call a different hospital to see if she was there. And sure enough, she was there. When we finally was able to reach her, because she wouldn't answer her cell phone or anything like that, it was a combination of trying to reach her from her cell phone and her room phone. And when we finally were able to reach her, she mentally was not there, no longer herself. She could only say a few words. I'm sick. I want to go home. I don't know. I love y'all. That was literally all she could say to us. Her only being able to say, I'm sick or I'm in pain. I love y'all. That lasted for a few days. Like, she couldn't say anything else. I want to go home. She couldn't say anything else for that full time frame. It was about a week. It was hit or miss to try to reach her from then on. Almost like she knew, and she didn't want to speak to anyone because she knew what was going to happen to her. She just felt that she wasn't going to make it, potentially. I don't know. Eventually, she was able to say, I know I went a little crazy for a little bit, and she was able to speak with us, more coherently. Her mental state still wasn't the same, but she was able to speak with us coherently. It was a lot of searching and all of that for her as well, because when I couldn't reach her on the phone, I would have to try to call her room phone, and then sometimes she wouldn't even answer that, so I'd have to call the nurse's station to see how she's doing, so to get some updates on her and her condition and everything. She had a blood clot in her leg, near her knee, and they told us that they were giving her everything that they can think of that they feel could help her get better. And at the time when the doctors told me that, I understood, but I didn't realize what they were trying to tell me. Sometimes things don't feel real. They didn't tell me that she wasn't going to make it, or that they didn't think that she wasn't going to make it. They never said that directly. As I'm reflecting, they never said it directly, but they kind of said it, One conversation we had, in talking about the wedding, she specifically said, I know y'all not going to have this thing because of me. And eventually she specifically said, I'm going to get out this place and I'm going to be there, and I'm going to be at your wedding. I'm going to be there. I guess she was right at this point. She was right. So Sunday, August 22nd, I called her and I told her, first of all, no, I called her, I'm sorry. And I told her that I was coming to see her because I loved her and I missed her. And her mood was just, oh, really? And I'm like, Yes, what do you mean? Oh, really? She told me she was teasing me, and we spoke, but her reception was really bad in the area of the hospital that she was. It's really bad in that particular hospital. I don't understand why. Because I even had issues when I went to visit her. I had a lot of reception issues. But I went there and I saw her. I guess she was shocked to see me. I don't know if she was shocked to see me or I don't think she was upset to see me, but I don't think she wanted me to see her in the position that she was in. And I saw her. The doctors were in and out the room checking on her. We watched the rest of the movie Life together. And then we ended up watching White Chicks and laughing, about that, talking. I helped get her washed. She needed help washing her back. I washed her back a lot. I had to help her get washed because she actually threw up while I was there. She had a big plate of food that she didn't want to eat. She wasn't eating for I guess the whole time she was there, really. I didn't realize that would have been the last time that I saw her. I actually was scared to be near her because I have 2 boys of my own, and I didn't want to take a risk to bring COVID home to them, even though she tested negative. They moved her to a ward where people are no longer contagious and all that, but I still was afraid. But I sat near her. I held her hand. We talked. I stayed with her for a couple hours, but I had to get home because I had to, get some food for my kids and take care of them. Before I left, I gave her a hug. I told her I loved her. She told me, no matter what, next week I'm getting out. Even if I got to walk out of here and I'm going to be at your wedding, I'm going to be there. So, Monday, after I left the hospital that day, on Sunday, I tried to call her cell phone, and I couldn't reach her at all. I just couldn't reach her at all. So Monday morning, I tried to call her cell phone. I couldn't reach her. So I got angry, and I called the nurse's station, and I told them her phone isn't working in her room. And I was specifically talking about her room phone. Her room phone wasn't working. She knew her cell phone wasn't getting a signal, but she never told any of the nurses that the room phone wasn't working, which leads us to believe that she really was not trying to speak with us at all. Like, she really didn't want to speak with us because I feel like she knew what was going on and she didn't want us to worry. But I really wish she didn't make that decision. I really wish she would have spoke with everyone that day while I was visiting her. I asked her if she wanted to see my boys because we, with FaceTime. And she said no. I asked her if she wanted her mom to go visit her. She said no. Anyway, the next day, when I called the nurse's station, they said, oh, she's no longer in this room. She's in a different room. Gave me the room number to that room. I ended up calling it. She picked up. She did pick up. And I told her, I told you I'm always going to find you. I'm always going to stalk you. I'm going to find you. Even if you don't pick up the phone, I'm going to find you. And, oh, so you think you're my mother now. And I said, I'm going to have to be that person if you're not taking care of yourself. I'm going to be that person until you're able to come back and be that person. We talked for a long time. Some of the time there was silence because I was at work, and I'm a manager where I work, so I'm delegating, I'm giving advice, giving instructions and following up on things and taking care of business. And she stayed on the phone and heard all of that. It heard me do all of that. And eventually told me that she'd call me back and she'd talk to me later. I tried to call her when I got home that night, I've been calling her. Her husband calling her, her mom calling her friends calling her. No answer at all. Like, she really didn't want to speak to anyone. She didn't want us to see her suffer or anything. She didn't want to speak to us. So this is the hardest part, of course. Tuesday morning at 5:30-ish or so in the morning, my stepdad calls me. He tells me that she had a heart attack and that the doctors are trying to work with her to revive her. They've been working with her, and they say that when they do CPR on her, her heart stays and she's fine, but when they walk away, her heart just gives up. And they said they don't know how long. They didn't know how long that they could keep it up. So then I hung up with him and I called my grandmother and I talked to her. It's my mom's mom. And, you know, we both on the phone. I'm trying not to cry because I know she's upset. And I'm trying to be strong and I'm trying to have faith that she's not going to give up, because she told me she was going to be at the wedding and she told me she was getting out this week and she told me that she was going to fight COVID and get better and get stronger and get better. A couple minutes later, my stepdad called me and he was crying and he told me that they said she passed away at 5:34 that morning. And my grandmother actually was on hold and I couldn't click back over to talk to her because I was so upset. I started crying and I was so upset, and I gave the phone to my husband and he talked to my grandmother for me because I couldn't tell her. I couldn't say the words to her in that moment that she was gone. I couldn't believe it. I wanted to tell this story because after all of that, speaking with my stepfather days of, afterwards, he told me that she didn't speak with him about getting vaccinated prior to all of this. And that every time she went to try to get vaccinated, some new conspiracy or some new issue would come out on the news that would prevent her from going to get vaccinated. And it makes me so upset that this stuff is out here, convincing people not to protect themselves. I hope you all look at all the parts of this story and receive this story and just really take heed and do your research and do what you need to do to protect yourself. My stepdad, in speaking with him, he talked about why he chose not to get vaccinated, and he said because he was young and he felt so that he would be able to fight it off if he got it. But what we're missing, the part about that we're missing is, yes, you'll be able to fight it off, maybe, if you're young. But if you bring it home, or if you bring it to work, school, what about that other person that may get it? What is their chances? What can they do? Can they survive if, although you are fine because you have it and you're getting better, can they get better? Will they be able to survive? Will they be able to have the same outcome as you? And that's what we're missing within this fight. It's one thing to think about yourself, but it's something more grand or greater within us when we consider the lives and the situations of others. If you're one of those people who feel as though that you'll get over COVID because you're young and you're strong, that may be true. But will your mother or will your sibling or your family member be able to say that same thing when you come home or school or work and bring COVID with you? Will they be able to say that same thing? Will they be able to say, I'm gonna make it too? If you're unsure about that, even in the slightest, then you should be doing whatever you can to protect them, your loved ones as well. I don't blame my stepfather for this at all. It's not his fault that he caught COVID. And then it just so happened that they got it. My mother and my brother, it's not his fault. That's not his fault. But at the same time, there's a way to prevent this heartache and pain from happening to other people. There's a way.